Fast character generation. I'm big on this. I want characters to be able to be generated quickly, even at high levels. And like I said, I don't know exactly going to have high levels, but even high level, powerful characters. That way, if you sit down, you're not playing, because to me, designing characters is not playing the game. Designing characters is fun. But to me, it's not playing the game. If I came over to somebody's house and we were going to have to play an RPG, especially if you don't get that much time to play, and you're like, oh man, I'm off work, whatever, I'm going to go play for 3 hours, and then you do nothing but design characters, I'm going to be upset. I don't want to do that. So I'm actually much more okay with pre-generated characters and things like that, options like that to be there to play. Other people don't like that. But even if you're designing your own character, I want you to be able to get your character designed, and then get playing. So if you've got 3 hours to play, I don't want more than about 15 minutes to be taken up with people trying to create characters. I want the system to be light enough as not to require constant rule reference or consultation of the rule book during play. I don't want you to be constantly having to look at the rule book. I understand the allure, and I thought this was an important point from Mark, that if you do have a really dense rule book, that doesn't mean the rule book can't be dense in this. But I don't want because I want you to look, you can be getting into something, but I don't want you to constantly have to reference the rule book during play. I am a big fan of unified action resolution mechanics. So that's what we came up with, a unified action resolution mechanic. So that determining the success or failure of critical actions can be done, can be adjudicated easily at the table. That old school gaming does not have this, and of course that's part of its charm. It's what people like. It's fine if it's fine if you like that. I mean, I found a lot of it appealing, but that's one thing that old school gaming doesn't do. It doesn't have a unified action resolution mechanic. How do you search for secret doors? Let me look that up. What die do I need to roll? What do I need to get? How do I knock down this door? How do I force open this door? Oh, let me check that. That's some other die roll over here. How do I bend bars? Like, everything has a different way to do it. And you just have to either remember that because it's all arbitrary. And it's probably made because it was put together kind of in an ad hoc way. Nobody knew what they were doing when they were first creating an RPG. So you had all these kind of ad hoc rules that allow you to do different things with no rhyme or reason, really. And I want to eliminate that. I am a big fan of unified action resolution mechanics. And that's why over the almost 200 episodes of The Morning Grind, a lot of the things that we looked at when we were looking and reviewing different RPGs was how do you actually play? Which we said was not necessarily how do you make a character, but when you sit down to actually play, what is it that you are doing at the table in order to resolve some kind of actions? I want to reduce the number of things that players need to track during the game. So what I was going to say is that, note, there is probably an optimal number of, let's call them resources for the purposes of this note, of resources that you can track, as a player during a game. Resources need to be significant. If I'm going to track it, it needs to be significant in the game. And if it's not significant, don't track it. That's what I'm saying. This is probably, and I would even say that this could be something that's done with physical. Now, what resources you can track, so as a further note, what resources you track can vary depending on the goal of the game, or goal of the session at the moment. And by that, I mean that if you are doing the hex crawl section because you are traveling to the dungeon, what you need to track is going to be different than what you need to track when you actually get to the dungeon and are actually operating inside the dungeon. Like when you're doing the hex crawl, when you're doing the traveling, you probably don't need to track torchlight or the number of torches. But that could be really important once you get to the dungeon. When you're doing the overland movement, rations might be really important. Okay, I need to really track rations. Now, hit points are probably going to be something that you always need to track. Like, okay, in order to play this game, you've got to accomplish these objectives. You've got to do these things without losing all these hit points. Because if you lose all these hit points, then you're dead. So hit points are one resource you need to track. Food, rations might be a resource you need to track when you're going overland. Torches might be one you need to track when you're going over, into a dungeon crawl. And then, if you're a wizard, and we'll talk about, magic later, but, mana, you got to manage your mana. What matters? I'm a big fan of, let's see, I want to use, this is just a note right here. I want a slot-based inventory system. That seems like something that people use. And I want this to be, and I want it to be significant, because I want inventory to be the source or to cause important decisions. Knave kind of did that. Now, one of the problems that I have with Knave is that Knave's resources and inventory system is way too limited. Like, I don't know, like, we've been over that when we were looking at Knave. We did a deep dive into Knave and Knave 2nd edition. And I feel like, man, even as a starting level character, I just have no inventory. But I want people ignore inventory and encumbrance because it sucks to have to add up pounds worth of stuff. And as the result of adding up all of the pounds worth of stuff, then all you get is a penalty. So who does that? Who enjoys that? Who likes that? I mean, a few people. But I would rather have a slot-based inventory that tracks only important resources and important items. That, why is it even there in the game? The purpose there is to cause the players to make important decisions at the table. What are you taking with you? If you take these things that you're tracking and managing and these things, then you're not going to take these things. So inventory and encumbrance should be causing the players to make important decisions. If it's not, then the system needs to be revised. That's what it's there for. You can't take everything with you when you're going out on an expedition. You're going to have to make choices about that. Everything's going to be a trade-off. The choices should be important. And like I said, like I'll track things, like I look at character sheets in D&D games that I've been in, and I'm looking at inventory, and I've just got all of this random crap that I've written down because I don't know what's important. The game master will say, okay, you open this chest, or as you're searching, you find, and it's this random list of stuff. Maybe some of it's important, maybe some of it's not. And I'm like, okay, what have I got? What have I got? I'm trying to write it down. And it's like, okay, embroidered handkerchief with this person's initials. Is that significant? Is that something I really need to pay attention to? Or is it just, okay, I need to make things seem more realistic. So, okay, there's an embroidered handkerchief, and there's a brass trinket, and something else, and a something else, and a something else. Does any of that really matter? And am I supposed to track how much that weighs and stuff like that? I hate all that. 10-foot pole. Let's see what's going on in the comment section for a moment. Sable Phoenix says, the optimal number of trackable resources is highly dependent on if you have physical tokens or items used for tracking them. That's more of a board game type question. I would like for you to be able to have physical tokens, whether that's a card or some type of meeple. Because if you physicalize it, is that a word? If you physicalize it? If you physicalize it, then I feel like you will pay more attention to it. And plus, then you're actually seeing, okay, torches. You could have torch meeples, and you've got a certain number of them there, and this is the number that you have, and you've got to put them in the used pile. And you're looking at the number of those that are going down. First of all, you remember if you're looking at it physically. Now, that means you also can't have 20 of them, because then they're all over the place on the table. But if you're looking at them, you're paying attention to it. And rather than marking off something and erasing something and changing a number, moving things physically is that's part of the gamist side. It wouldn't mean that you had to do it, but that is part of that's part of the gamist side of that. Dungeon Masters, as I'm assuming there's less dark vision if torches are important. Hi, Dungeon Master. Good to see you. That would be setting specific. I just gave torches as an example. And a lot of the OSR or the way we're going, a lot of OSR is going, there's less dark vision, so torches are important. Oh, the last Phoenix says, I love random crap, especially if you find matching sets like Jade Earring and then a Jade Tiara. Well, if it's important, then it's important. Joel says, I use physical counters red glass to represent body parts in Hero Quest. Are people starting to use body parts now instead of body points? I love it. BC items, including arcane spells, all take up inventory space. You're limited to 20 items total and can only have equipped access to 10 at once. Yeah, that's something that I liked about, or that I thought was missing in Knave. I was like, maybe this inventory system wouldn't be quite as bad if I had, if like equipped items didn't count or something like that. If I had a combat load, an equipped load, and then, you know, additional load. Of course, we're going to talk about Maul's Ritter too. But yeah, I agree with that. I agree. So I want, like, even though I was saying up here that I want this to be light enough that you're not constantly having to reference the rule book, I don't want this to be so light that it requires creative and on-the-fly adjudication of situations by the game masters and players. Because I find that seems to be a problem with a lot of the rules-light games. And I found this was a problem with Fate as well. Because it's very easy to write something like partial successes. And you hit this and, you know, and you're partially successful. And it's very easy to write in even pretty flowering language. You know, that something creative happens, and the game master can come up with exactly what that is. Well, I know the game master can come up with exactly what that is. I know the players potentially can, but the question is, one, do they want to, and how does that actually play out at the table? I mean, I would like to say I'm a pretty creative guy in general, and I would like to say that a lot of the people that I play with are generally pretty creative. But on the other hand, sometimes it's very difficult to come up with on the fly. You know, I need I think I've used something like this as a success. You know, as an example. Okay, I'm trying to get the radioactive, I'm trying to convince the radioactive Triceratops through an interpretive dance that I need it to disclose some important information. Okay, you rolled partial success. Okay, the game, and then the rule book says the game master just describes what partial success is. Well, what in the world is partial success? Like, other than just saying, okay, you were partially successful at getting the radioactive Triceratops to disclose some information, roll again or something like that. Even if you're a creative person and you got to make several of these decisions in the middle of the game, to me, that's very difficult. I want the game to provide that. It can be enticing when you read it in a rule book like that, but that's also moving toward more the gamist element and less of the narrative element. Because sometimes I feel like the rules light games, these narrative kinds of rules light games, kind of rely too heavily on or you know, just by hand waving that and saying that adjudicate it at the gaming table. Well, I know we can adjudicate the gaming table, but do we want to, and do we have to come up with that all the time? The same kind of things with wounds. I really want there to be wounds. I want there to be consequences of damage, but I also find those are difficult to come up with on the fly. Okay, you've been damaged for a major, you know, or a moderate injury from a mace. Please describe that. You have to do that in Fate when you come up with the consequence. And, you know, that comes up, and then we're all kind of looking at each other at the table going, okay, a moderate mace injury. You just end up writing like moderate bruise, you know, or something like that, you know, because you don't have that. The game needs to provide that. I want the game to provide that, either through tables or through cards. I also happen to really like cards, so it could be cards. So I don't want to just have, I don't want the rules to be the crutch, you know, to pass all of that on to the game masters and the players. The rules need to adjudicate things. Yeah. Fate has success at a cost instead of partial. You succeed, period. But also, the Triceratops steals your underpants, right? The Last Phoenix says, I hate that about rules light system. When you say make your own judgment or whatever. If I'm making the rules myself, why do I need a book? That's exactly what I'm saying, Last Phoenix. I completely agree with you.